Hey everyone, welcome to another Yogi Misfit Sessions. My name is Danny Pomploon and I'm your host. It's been a year-long journey since I last had Krista on the show, almost a year to the date. And we welcome her back. She's an amazing marketer here in San Francisco. She helps a bunch of wellness individuals achieve their dreams and goals. And this episode, we get really real. We get down to the nitty-gritty of where I'm at. We basically pretty much talk about the zero fucks that we give these days in the best way possible, and you know, how much we've learned over the last year, and kind of just reflecting and looking back. Every time I talk with Krista, I feel like my soul just gets a recharge. So it was an honor and a pleasure to have her on the show, and you know, I hope you loved the episode, because I am still just like glowing from it as I do this intro. And I'm just pushing really hard, y'all. As you know, I've been talking a lot about supporting the show. We're collecting donations. It goes straight to the show. It just goes right back into putting the show out there so that you guys can continue to listen to it, have amazing content. This is really the only way that the show continues to get produced. So you can check out the link below, which is Donor Box, and you can do a one-time donation to the show, or you can do like a monthly little couple dollars here and there. You can maybe one Starbucks less a month, and then you support the podcast that you love so much. See where I'm going with this? And if that's not your jam, you can always leave a review on iTunes. That is another great way that it lets your friends know about the show, and it just continues to spread the word. And sharing this show in general with your friends, and when you've listened to an episode that you love on Instagram, all that fun stuff, really just helps us out. We continue to grow together. It's been such an honor, a joy, and a privilege to grow with you guys. And so much love to SF Yoga Magazine. Without further ado, let's get into session 99 with Krista. Krista, we're at it again. Actually, a year later, we're at it again.
Can you believe it's been a whole year?
No, I can't believe it's been a whole, well, actually, yes and no, but I'm more so in disbelief that I made it this year. I'm still fucking alive right now.
I feel like it was like the longest year of my entire life.
Well, okay. So just in general context. So we had coffee last Monday, Wednesday, whenever it was. And we both sat down and immediately. We're both just like,
we're tired.
Low energy sounds kinder.
Sure. Right.
Language is everything. Low energy.
It's all in the delivery.
Fatigued. Low energy. In need of a nap. Tired. A little aggressive.
Sure. Okay, I'm tired.
All right. But yeah, like honestly, I'm like, so here's the thing about burnout that no one tells you. And surprise everyone, I'm still talking about burnout. What? Here's the thing about burnout that no one tells you is that the recovery for burnout doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't even happen over months. It takes a while. And although I had wrote these big, beautiful posts about me being burnt out and blah, 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 yada, 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 like I still have the commitments that I have this year. They actually end. The last big one that I have ends this Sunday. And I can't fucking wait because I'm going on 2 months of not having a day off.
That's serious. Like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how either of us really survived this year, but I do know that when we recorded this last year, we talked a lot about the hustle. Mm-hmm. And I think we love what we do. So I'm not tired of my work. I don't resent my work. I'm resenting myself for not setting better boundaries and sort of like making better decisions. But also this podcast is not about how to get out of burnout because we don't know yet. So TBD.
Yeah. If you do find out though, please feel free to write us in.
But I think
this podcast is us asking for your help. Help us.
Should be like that, like where we have people call in and like give us their advice.
And we just start crying.
Yeah. But for me, you know, it was almost like an exhale getting breakfast with you because I look up to you a lot and you inspire me a lot in business. And you know that I've had you on my podcast. You're one of the, hardest working people I know. And I pride myself also in working really hard. And a year ago, I thought that was really cool to just say how stressed out I was all the time and how busy I am all the time because it made me sound like more relevant and more successful. And then getting lunch with you or breakfast with you last week, you were like, I'm actually making a lot of these changes in my life to work less and to rest more. And it doesn't mean like you're any less inspired by your work. In fact, I believe you're more inspired by it than ever. And we're just allowed to evolve. And
Yeah,
it
for
gave me
sure.
like this huge exhale, like, okay, if Danny is restructuring, if Danny is taking this break, then maybe I'm allowed to too. And I think that's one thing as entrepreneurs that pride ourselves in the hustle is also priding ourselves in being able to say, hey, we overdid it a little bit and now we're going to take a break. And that's okay too.
I personally think that's the sign of a good leader, like, and you have to, like, in the sense that you have to be able to step up and realize, where you have made, I don't want to say mistakes, but areas for improvement or where you could change and shift things differently. And, that first, thank you for all the sweetness. And how I feel about it. Let's just keep love bombing each other right now. Like I definitely like, I respect and see what you do. And it's really awesome. And two, same, like I'm so motivated by what you just offer into the world that it makes me want to do the same. So basically your love is my drug.
I feel like that's a book or something.
It's a song by Kesha.
I'm kidding. Oh, this is going to be a silly one. I can feel it.
I'm into it. It's the realer, the better. That's my thing right now. But tying back in, it takes a lot to be able to admit when you're like, there's too much. It takes a lot to be able to admit that you need help. It takes a lot to admit that you need to back off, that you need to take a step back. That is not, it's not ingrained in our nature. It's not ingrained in the United States. The whole act of being busy is actually, it's smiled upon. It's like, it's a thing that you're supposed to do. And I just don't really buy into that anymore. I would rather be productive than busy, like any day.
Yeah. I mean, people say all the time you need to work smarter, not harder. And I had a boss, actually, Lindsay, she's the CEO of Ritual, and I was working for her. She used to say, like, I don't want somebody ever complaining to me about how hard they're working. Like, I don't care if you work 2 hours a week, if you get it all done. Like, that's what's inspiring to me. And I remember being like, that's the first time I had really heard that. I always thought my boss wanted me to be like on all the time. And now when I see these people that I look up to, like we talked a lot about Burning Man. I would say most of our conversation wasn't about work for
Right.
maybe the first time. And I left feeling inspired to work a little smarter and to figure out for myself going into this next year what it is I really enjoy doing and how I can help more people, how I can find more abundance and just work less.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever said that out loud. I'm going to work less.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I'm kind of on that train of like, and I don't know, there's a lot that's happened this year. I think maybe this is the first time I've talked about it on the podcast, but I had this moment where last year, come December, I had a, meeting with you and the rest of everyone that helped support me. And we had all these big grand, like we're going to do this, this, and this. And it was like, it was just, there was a lot, and we had this support structure in the way or set up, to go through it and, accomplish all these really awesome, amazing, big, high level dreams. When we look at it all, they were all like things where I was like, yeah, I like dream of doing X, Y, and Z. And on the end of it, I accomplished X, Y, and Z too.
Yeah, all of them.
But literally, I checked
Check,
all of the
check, check,
boxes.
check.
Yep. And I came out of the end and was like, well, wait, what now? Like, okay, so I did the things they're supposed to. Okay, that congrats, you did the things, and then what? if we look at, what I was telling you, if we look at it like a graph, and the horizontal line is success and the vertical line is, happiness. Ideally, we want to climb that at a sweet diagonal. And I think that I was at the start. And then somewhere in there, I got sidetracked and got caught up in the success and being like, well, I have to tick these boxes. I have to make these goals. I have to make these goals. I have to make these goals. And because I said I was going to make these goals and I was afraid to push back on them or to say, you know what, maybe I don't do this year anymore or whatever, to fail, I guess. I lost sight of my happiness, and that included my own self-care, that included my own practice, that included the way my sleep, my tea time, like coffee in the morning, playing around with photography, being comfortable, like just all the things that were a big part of me, I lost track of. And it wasn't until I got to Burning Man, where I had a week of nothing. I had a week of something that I absolutely just am obsessed with and I love, and it's a big part of my life, where I was like, what the fuck have I been doing? Like, what did I just do? And people had mentioned and said things, along the way, but you can't, all you can do is listen to that stuff. You may not be ready to hear it though. You kind of have to go through it until you're like, oh, I get it now.
I can't express how much that resonates with me. And I think that getting stuck in the success, like we started out and we still like have heart-centered businesses and are also entrepreneurs. And I think one of the things that happens with being an entrepreneur, regardless of our business, because our businesses are same, but different, I think.
Right.
And so for me, it's like there's no ceiling. And so I'm checking all of the boxes and it's like, but if I do this an hour later, if I take on this project or whatever, I'll make more for my company. I'll make more for my company. And it's like never ending versus if you have a 9 to 5, my friend talks about this all the time, whether she stays till 3:00 on a Wednesday or 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, she gets paid the same.
Right.
But for you and I, like if you do that retreat or sign up for that teacher training, if you take on that extra work, it's going to grow your business in a significant way. However, what I realized and what I know you realized too, and what Gay Hendricks says, who I just had on my podcast, is like success is happiness of the wallet and the heart. And when you're an entrepreneur, like I lost sight of the things that make my heart really happy. And right now, one of those things, which is very funny, is running. I like to go to the gym for, this is going to sound crazy, 2 hours because I like to do the sauna afterwards. And when I get to do that, I'm actually better in business. I'm a better wife. I'm a better friend. I mean, you name it. I've been getting more massages, like some things I've really started to bring into my routine, eating healthier, which is funny because what a hypocrite. I was just telling you how I've been eating today or moved. But for the most part, I'm calling myself out here, but I've been realizing how important these things are. But I think you touched on something super important at the beginning is burnout. You can't overcome it in a week. And when you have been hustlers for what feels like 50 lifetimes, it's going to take more than just a couple weeks or a couple months to find that flow and that balance that actually works. And I think, admitting it is the first step, and that's where we're at. And now we're starting to make those changes in our business. And I'm really inspired by the changes that you're making. Like going on a break sounds more inspiring than like any business deal you could have told me about, like that's the best thing for your business right now. And I can feel it. And for your heart. And without Danny, and without Krista, there is no business.
Right.
So if we lose ourselves, then really what's the point in helping everyone else all the time? So yeah. And the other thing too, that I love about you, and you just said, is the photography thing. Like I felt your authenticity sort of coming back the last few months, and I couldn't really pinpoint what it was, but then you were telling me about some of your morning routines and things that you've taken up again, and you can feel it. Like I could feel the change in you happening.
Yeah, it's been, So this is, I mean, this is another thing which I think is just kind of silly as well. But like, I've been playing around with my phone, and I've been playing around with my DSLR camera, and I've been taking pictures of me in the morning, and I just happen to be taking pictures of me in my underwear, and it's been really fun. And the first time I did it, I was like, oh, that's just kind of silly. And the second time I did it, I was like, why can't I do that? Why do I have to be a yoga teacher and I can't like hang out in my underwear? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. There's women in half naked clothes all over Instagram, and yet I can't wear my underwear in my own home and take a picture of it that's super decent. It doesn't look, it's like, who cares? Like, why are you worried about what I'm wearing? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up as an example because, well, I had two questions when I saw you. It was one, what's with the underwear pictures? And two, how many pieces of underwear do you own?
So the other thing to this too, just so that we can kind of unpack this, and there's two things I always like to say. You never need to really say you're sorry, and you never need to explain yourself. But to put it into context, I didn't love my body for a really long time, a really, really, really long time. Being queer and, being pressured to like have these big sexy muscles and da 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 da. And, just I've always been tall and skinny, and I never really loved that. And, I turned 35 this year, and something really just happened. Something happened where I decided that wasn't going to be part of my story anymore. And, like I was just going to accept who I was in this body as I am. And so I'm doing that. And like, I don't know what everyone else cares or what everyone else says, like, kudos me for loving on myself right now. That's what I'm more inclined to say.
Boom. And that was the answer. So it's that you are caring so much less about what other people think. And I was telling you this before I left that breakfast with you, so inspired. And then we like text all day how much we love each other and like, why don't we do this more? Because it really does ignite something in me every time. And I never know what it's going to be. But I ended up writing this whole post, and funny enough, I don't have any pictures I like of myself right now to post with it. But so I wrote it in my notes, and it's about, I used to think, working hard and all of this stuff was so cool. But what it really came down to is I cared what other people think, and I still really do.
Right.
And I walked away from that meeting with you thinking, wow, Danny just like gives no fucks right now. And then I thought about it later and was like, he actually gives a lot of fucks. Like he really, really cares. But what he doesn't care about right now is what other people think. And that's authentic and that's inspiring. And that's what's shining through in your posts. You've been choosing to post a lot more personal, a lot more vulnerable that we even talked about on a podcast in the past. Why you don't choose to post stuff like that, and seeing that real Danny on social media, I feel closer and I feel more connected, and it's more authentic and it's more vulnerable. And this little detachment has happened for you. And can you tell me more about that? Can you teach me your ways?
I don't, I'm questioning a lot whether is it 35? Is it this what happens? Or like, maybe it's just where I'm at in life, but there's so many things that I do care about right now. There's so many things that are so important to me right now that I don't really have time for this excess bullshit. What's really important for me right now is to heal myself from this burnout. What's really important for me right now is to create space for myself to practice so that I can share that practice with people, because that's what I want to teach, and that's what people are going to resonate with. And that's also what's going to take students deeper, is when I'm actually practicing, when I'm actually studying the things versus, well, I'm supposed to be this, yoga teacher and I have to look and carry myself a certain way. No, I'm also a real person in the world, and, queer and yogi, and also brother, and also friend, and also partner and fiance, and all these things. Like I just don't really have the time and the patience to deal with that anymore. I was in a teacher training and someone asked me how I got injured, and I was like, I was on a lot of drugs and I fell. And they were like, what? And I'm like, my story's out there, it's in a book, everyone knows, like I'm also not just going to like go praising that I was like doing a bunch of crazy stuff, but like, who cares? Like, everyone is human and we all go through the things. And why are we so caught up on this small, like, picking apart. Someone tried to shame me for taking a picture of me in my underwear. And they're like, shouldn't you carry yourself a little bit differently? And I'm like, what? Like how, how is not being me, or, like pretending not to like incorporate who I am into everything that I do, not, how is that not being real? And since when am I supposed to be everyone's role model?
Since no one, I'm like lost for words hearing all of that, because I just am resonating with it so much. And I feel like we both tend to be on these similar paths. But I think what's happening is we're allowed to evolve. We're allowed to change our minds. We're allowed to, I had this really interesting moment happen, and I shared this with you, where somebody that I've previously worked with, I recently found out new information about, and I was like beating myself up for feeling duped or thinking that this person was authentic in the past. But we only have the information we have, and that's what we can do with it, right? So the information that I had at the time and what I knew was that it was authentic. Now, the new information that I have, I'm realizing I'm allowed to change my mind, but I can't be mad at myself for thinking about something differently in the past. It's redundant. Like, you have the information that you have, and you can choose every day to be authentic and in integrity with that information. And then when you get new information, you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to change your practice. You're allowed to change your lifestyle. I haven't done yoga in 6 months. Like, I'm running now. What the fuck? It's like, it's okay. I'm deciding that I want to take my business in a new direction and maybe expand and partner with new people. And that's okay. And I think the more honest you are with yourself, the more it's going to trigger other people, and the more it's going to inspire other people. And I'm just here to make people feel. So whether I piss somebody off or I make somebody really excited, to me, they're both wins, because I showed up as myself. They saw me, and what triggered in them, I have no responsibility for. And I think that's what you're teaching me. And that's what we were really talking about, is you're just doing you, and you're being honest, and you're in integrity, and you're sharing your authentic truth right now with what you have and what you know. And it is not your responsibility for how people react to that.
Right. Yeah.
You can't control other people's reactions. You just can't.
And also, I'll also, if something that I'm doing that is, one, not harming anyone physically or myself, or something like that, is triggering somebody, or, it's bringing something up, that's not my story. That is something that is like happening in there that it has nothing to do with me. Like zero to do with me. That is something that's in their values, that's in their belief, that's in, their whatever it is that's coming up, and it has zero to do with me.
I love that. I love it. And I think, that's what I came back from Nepal. I was just in Nepal for a month and sitting with a lot of spiritual teachers. And I came back, which is funny, more righteous and judgmental than ever before. Yeah. So you think I would like come back peaceful, but I'm like all of a sudden righteous. And it's such an ego trip, because these spiritual teachers over there, they don't care at all. They live in bliss. Like, they don't care about my ego trip or anything like that. So it's all me. But what one of my coaches was saying, I was like talking about how I was having this reaction to somebody being inauthentic and feeling like they were, sort of duping me, and how she was like, well, what didn't you like about the interaction? She's like, well, where is that showing up in your life? Because there's a reason why that behavior is triggering you. And there's a reason why you're coming back righteous and feeling all this stuff. One, the teacher said, which I really love, the poison comes before the nectar. So when you're feeling these things, like, you're still on the path, but the poison comes first. And the other piece of this is when you're having a reaction to Danny, for example, like what I realized, and I'm going to be super honest right now, when I first saw your underwear pictures, I was just kind of like a little annoyed. And I realized, and I didn't tell you this the other day, saying this for the first time now, I realized it's because I would never feel the confidence to post a picture like that. And I have been working out a lot and took a selfie the other day in the mirror, and I like felt really good about it. And I care too much about what other people think to share it. And that's why I was triggered by it. And I have enough like wherewithal and pay life coaches at the butt enough to know that like this is my issue right now.
Right.
But I think a lot of people don't take the time to reflect on that. And I reflected a lot after our meeting the other day, or our breakfast or hang. It wasn't a meeting at all. And I was able to sort of like understand what was inspiring me about what you were doing, what I wanted to learn more about. You know, you have to reflect. And I just think that we're in a time of reflection as it is. We're like wrapping up the year, and to sit down and sort of just dump where we're at, to me, was such an exhale. And now to be able to reflect the positive sort of pieces of that conversation, because let's be real, not all of that was positive.
Yeah, for sure.
And to be able to sit here and be like, here's what I'm taking from that, and here's what I want to share publicly about that, and my process with burnout, I think it can only help people by sharing the truth. I mean, the easiest thing to sell is the truth. So
The funniest thing about all this is, you know, so just a little backstory, you know, when I came out of the burnout thing, I had a meltdown at home. It wasn't like anything. Wasn't rushed to the hospital or anything, but I just sat here and was sobbing because I felt stuck and I was tired, and I'm sorry, I was low energy. You know,
why are we not using the word tired? Is that not like, okay?
It just sounds insulting.
Okay.
You're tired. Supermodels don't get tired. We get low energy.
Right. Sorry.
You know, and when I had reflected on that is when, like the whole through it thing, right? The whole through it. You have to get through it to get to the other side of it. When I had reflected on that and sat down and was like, you know, you did all this stuff, you ticked all the boxes you wanted in your career, Danny, and now what? You know, and for what? It was big and it was huge. And then I'd realized I have not just been poisoning myself this year, like physically, but like mentally, that I decided I was doing Project Danny for 30 days. This is the first time I've actually said that I've been doing Project Danny to anybody. And I'm on day 27 right now. In the last 27 days, I have woken up an hour and a half early. I've been posting this stuff on Instagram to keep myself accountable, but also to make myself feel good, you know, to like, just be like, look what for me, not for anybody else, but for me. And I've been posting like my coffee pictures. I've been posting my, you know, morning pulling cards. And like, you know, for me, my pulling cards is like tapping into my source and being like, what do I need today? What do I need to learn today? And I've been journaling every single day. And I've been hanging out and tooling around with my camera and taking pictures and, you know, like doing my handstand practice and, you know, doing my own little practice in my hallway and then taking pictures afterwards, because it feels good to take care of myself right now. And that's what I'm sharing, you know, whatever it is, when I'm doing all of this, or, you know, the whole thing, like I'm just sharing like what my routine is right now and what my healing is, you know, right now. And this whole, like, since Project Danny started, where I was just like, okay, I need to, like, you know, check in and see where I'm at. And like, you know, my partner, God, like, he's the coolest person in the whole wide world. First off, let's just say that he's the most amazing human being. And I'm so lucky to have him in my life, but I know out of anybody would call it like it is. And he's been teaching yoga for 20 years. And he was like, you know what, babe, I've never seen you this tuned in to a practice, this so clued in with your like I have never felt this close to my students, to this people that come to my class, not my students, the people that come to my class to learn, in so long. I've never had the most realist conversations at the start of class, like as I walk around and just like hang out with everyone. And so, yesterday I started class and there was 4 boys in the front who come every week, and we started talking, and then we turned the conversation around and asked the back row what they thought of what we were talking about. And then the second row like chimed in, you know, and it was like everyone was just having a conversation instead of like practicing yoga right away. And it was fucking incredible. And it was awesome because there was no student, there was no teacher. It was just a bunch of knuckleheads like having a conversation and laughing and giggling. And then we eventually practiced yoga.
You're present.
That's what I've been going through in the last, you know, 27 days. And I said I was going to do this for 30. And, now I'm picking up a Kriya and I've honestly have never felt like I do in this current day, in this current moment, than I have in a long time. And that is why I say, fuck it. And I'm going to do this stuff, and it's healthy for me, and it's not harming anybody. And it has made me feel so connected, and it's pulled me so deep into the practice, like I don't know. It's just what I tell people all the time is come back to the practice, and coming back to the practice has told me to love myself.
It was like what you were talking about earlier, like the best thing that you're not harming anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you're doing by taking care of yourself and by taking care of yourself first, it's funny, I actually had a call with a psychic last night, and she's like one of the most sought after psychics, and I mind-blowing conversation. But the point is, when I asked her the best thing I can do for my business, she said, you're too focused on everyone else and not focused enough on yourself. And the best thing you can do for you, your clients, I said, how can I best be of service? And she said, take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think when I saw you the other day, the first thing I said was, how are you? What are you up to? And normally we would jump into this like crazy business conversation. And you literally looked at me so calm and you were like, I'm just hanging out, Krista.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just hanging out. And it was this calmness about you. And the conversation and the way it went, it was like, I can hang out. And I think it's just given me permission. And hopefully I think that you have a lot of really hardworking people that listen to this podcast, a lot of hustlers, a lot of entrepreneurs that are really inspired by you. And it's inspiring that you're chilling out. It's inspiring that you're putting Danny first. And it's having a really good effect on your friendships. Like, I never felt more connected to you than our conversation. I think it's having a positive effect on your relationship with your partner, like you just said, and on your students, that now you're not even calling students. You're saying, you're all in the same level. Like, that is beautiful. So I think that seeing you evolve, this past year, as we're sort of wrapping up the year, like here we are still in it together. Mm-hmm. And, I've had a lot of people come and go in my life this past year, a lot of relationships and connections I've let go of energetically and from a business standpoint. And here we are, like still together, still having these conversations. And every time we download and every time we meet up, whether it's publicly on a podcast or like privately that no one else will know because it's sacred and it's special and it's to us, I just am grateful that there's somebody else that like sees my journey evolving, and I'll keep giving you permission if you keep giving me permission. And, it's just what's allowing everyone to be able to see, because whether you say you're like focused on business or your students right now or not, that's what you do for a living. And that's not going to change. Like, there are people looking up to you and there are people coming to class to learn from you. And this right now happens to be what you're teaching. And I think that's great.
And let's get one thing clear. This is something a student that I had met at a festival told me this. So that we're all clear, everyone that has come to my class, anyone that's going to come to my class, anyone that's going to have any type of interaction with me, period. I want you to know right now, I'm going to disappoint you at some point. I'm going to disappoint you, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to do some really dumb shit because I am human too, and I'm trying my best to navigate the space with what I've got today.
Mic drop.
End of show. Boom.
I mean, what am I supposed to say after that? That whole thing just triggered me in itself because I'm like terrified of making, it's like you're great. It's great. I'm so grateful to know you. And I'm just laughing because I think our friendship is really fun. We get so serious and so light, depending on the minute and depending on our mood. And I've always allowed you to be you. And I think you've always seen me and allowed me to be me. And I'm not able to show up in most conversations. I think that I'm always sincere. I'm always authentic, and I'm always in integrity. But there's a difference between authenticity and transparency. And I can actually be transparent with you. Because I think to be authentic, especially in a place where we have a platform, there has to be like a teachable moment. Like, it's not always healthy to just dump on people, but for you, you like give me permission sometimes to dump, to just
Yeah.
say the thing. And then we come up with that teachable moment together, or we find that piece of inspiration that will keep us going, and appreciate it. I appreciate you. Now I want to have you on my podcast again because let's just bring this full circle. I came on your podcast for the very first time just about a year ago. And after that, I realized I wanted to do it myself. And you were incredibly supportive of that. You were one of my very first guests. And now I'm almost a year into my podcast. And you're definitely inspiring a lot of decisions in business. And I think we're going to create some really fun stuff in 2020. And if we don't, I think we'll take a nice break and rest. I know we've been talking about doing that together, turning our phones off.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of both.
Maybe a little bit of both. Knowing us, it'll be a little bit of both.
Well, when you love what you do, you can't really stop, but it is important to stop and take a breath.
For sure. So good. So good.
Let's hang out.
That's it.
I think that's it too. I have nothing to push. I have no calls to action.
All right. Well, then I think we wrap it. I think this is super soft. For those of you that have hung on this far, I think Krista and I are out.
Peace.